Hello everyone, we are back with another Ren'Py tutorial today. And for this week's tutorial, we have something kind of interesting and a little bit different. This was a request by a viewer that made a comment on my last video. So this is for @reallycute7603, who requested a turn-based battle system. So it took me a little while to get this working, but I think I've come up with a very simple battle system that you can kind of take and expand upon. We'll talk about some ways that you can add to it later, but for this, I just want you to to kind of show you the basics of how you could get a system like this up and running pretty quickly. So a couple of things. First of all, if you want to see more content like this, if you have any other questions, leave me a comment below, and I'll see if I can tackle them in a future video. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. All of those things really help me out in the algorithm and help me get in front of as many eyes as possible, which is my goal at this point. So thank all of you that continue to watch my videos and support me. I really, really appreciate it. So before we get into this, there are a couple of prerequisites that you should have. We're going to go the object-oriented programming route, so you should have a pretty good understanding of classes and objects and some other basic OOP concepts. I'll post a link to my introduction to OOP above now, so if you want to go ahead and check that first. We're going to do a little slightly more advanced OOP stuff than I covered in that video. And we're also going to do a little bit of basic screen language. I'm going to do another deep dive into screen language pretty soon, but this one is pretty basic, so I think that you should be able to follow along even if you don't have any experience with screen language. So without further ado, let us get into the turn-based battle system. So right now, I actually started a completely fresh project and for this tutorial, and just got a couple of lines of code right now, basically just defining 2 images and then 2 characters. So these characters that I've defined are for the purposes of dialogue. When we do the battle system, we're going to create 2 new characters that represent these same characters, but they're just going to keep track of all the variables and things. This is only for the purposes of the dialogue in the game, and the other one is going to be for the purposes of the battle system. So I'll remind you of that when we get to defining those later on. All right, so first thing we need to do is we need to define a character class, kind of like we did in my earlier OOP videos. And this one is going to represent both the player and the enemy. After that, we're going to subclass this class in order to give the player some specialized abilities. So we'll get that in a moment. So first thing we're going to do is create an init Python block. It should be lowercase Python. There we go. And if you remember, init means that this is going to run at initialization. So this is going to be like one of the first pieces of code that runs when the game starts up. And Python means that this is going to be a block of pure Python. So we're going out of Ren'Py now and not using Ren'Py code, but using like pure vanilla Python code. And so any good battle system needs a bit of randomness. So we're going to import the random module for Python. And this is just going to let us use some functions that have to do with random numbers, but we do have to import that in order to get access to those functions. So we're going to go ahead and create our character class, and we want to capitalize that by convention. And we're going to create our initialization function. And again, I'm going to go over this kind of quickly only because we've covered this stuff before. So just check out my other video if you need a little bit of a refresher on what exactly we're doing right now. But we're just going to create all of our variables. So we're going to use name. We're going to have a maximum health, or well, a health variable. It's not necessarily going to be maximum because that's going to go down as we get into the battle. Oops. There we go. So name, health, and attack. Next, let me go ahead and just define these functions real quick, and then we'll go and fill them in a minute. So I need a function to tell whether or not the character is alive. So basically every turn of the battle, we're going to check to see if a character is alive. If one of them is not alive, then we know it's going to be time to end the battle. So I'm just going to say is alive, self, and we're just going to pass for right now. Like I said, we're going to fill that in a moment. We also have to have a way for the character to take damage. So we're going to create a take damage method on this class. I'm just going to pass that for right now. And then we have to have a way for them to deal damage. So we're going to create a deal damage method as well. And we're also going to pass that. All right, now let's go ahead and fill these in. So the Is alive method is going to be the easiest one. We only need one line of code. We're going to say return self.health is greater than 0. This is a great one-liner to use if you ever need to check the truth of a statement. More novice programmers usually will split this into a couple of lines, like you might say something like, if self.health is less than or equal to 0, return false, or something like that. So basically that's saying if your health falls below or equal to 0, we're going to return false. So if we're asking is alive, that's going to be false. This is a way of just squeezing that same thing into one line. So we're going to say return self.health is greater than 0. So if self.health is greater than 0, it's going to return true. And if the health is not greater than 0, meaning if it's lesser than or equal to 0, it's going to return false, letting us know that that character is no longer alive. So again, really cool, useful one-liner to use. All right, take damage is going to be similarly simple. It's only going to take a couple of lines. So on this one, we're going to take two parameters. We're going to take self and damage. Remember, the self has to be there for every method, so we know that we're referring to that specific instance of that character class. And then we're going to have to know how much damage is being dealt to the target, to the character. So we're going to do that is we're just going to say self.health minus equals damage. So that's going to set our health equal to the total minus whatever damage we just took. All right, then we're going to say self.health equals max self.health 0. This one seems a little bit weird at first, but what this is going to do is this is going to let us avoid having a negative health value. We want the lowest possible health value to be 0. We don't want to go into negative numbers. So this max is a built-in function in Python where it basically takes the maximum out of all of the parameters that are given to it, all the arguments that are given to it. So in this one, if the self.health is lower than 0, it's going to set it to 0 instead. So it's just going to take the greater of those two values, again, helping us to avoid negative numbers, which will be a little bit annoying to deal with. All right, and deal damage is going to be a little bit trickier, but not too much. This is where our randomness comes in. So we're going to determine how much damage to do to the other character. So for this one, we're going to use a function called random.randint. So we're going to call it random because we're using the random module, and then we're going to call a specific method on that. Because remember, when we import random, it's basically just a class. Kind of like we're defining our own class here, and then there are methods on that class. Randint is a method on the random class. It's a method that's contained. And randint, as you might guess, is going to select a random integer between two given values. So we're going to set the low value first, and we're going to set that to self.attack. So the attack is basically our attack power. It's how much damage we can do. So we're going to say attack, set that equal to attack minus 5. And then the maximum is going to be self.attack plus 5. So if our attack value is 20, then it's going to select a number between 15 and 25. And that's going to be our attack range. Then after that, we're going to say target, which target here is whatever we're attacking. Target.take damage. And then we're going to pass in that amount of damage that we just got. That's how much damage that we're going to do to the target. And then we're going to return, if I can spell, there we go, that damage value. So basically, we're going to pass that into the other objects take damage, and that's going to be how much damage they're going to take. So again, hope that makes sense. I think that's pretty clear. Next, we need two more classes that we're going to subclass from this character class. I don't know if we covered subclassing before, but subclassing is basically when you take a class and just add some things or take things away from it. So this character class can refer to, in this case, it's going to refer to either a player or an enemy. So when we refer to the enemy, we're not going to give it any special functions. Like we already have everything we need. So we're just going to create an enemy class. We're going to pass in character to it because we are subclassing that character class. And then we're not going to add anything. So our enemy class is identical to the character class. So nothing really changes with that. But we have the option of going in and changing things later. We can change that pass statement and add different special abilities that we might want a particular enemy to have. All right, next we're going to do our player class, and we're going to do the same thing to begin with. We're going to subclass it from the character class. But this one we're going to give it a couple of extra things. So the first thing we need to do is explicitly tell it that we want it to inherit everything from that other class. And I may cover the superclassing in a future video, but for now we don't really have to fully understand exactly what's going on here. But basically this is just telling us that we're going to inherit the name, health, and attack from what we call the superclass. That's the class that we're inheriting from. And we're going to add another thing down at the bottom. This is the main reason that we have to differentiate the player class, is because our player is going to have the ability to defend, and our enemy right now is not going to have the ability to defend. So we're just going to give it a flag. We're going to say self.defending, and we're going to set that equal to false, which means that by default, our player is not defending, but we're going to give them the option to defend later on. But for now, we're just going to leave it at that. All right, let us keep going. So the two things that we need after that, and we're going to stay in this init Python block. I'm trying to keep track of where my indentation is. There we go, our one level of indentation. So we're going to need a function for the player's action. So remember, like we covered before, functions are what we use in order to keep rewriting the same bits of code over and over. So this is going to allow us to create the player and enemy attacks just one time. And that's a player's function, I meant player's action. There we go. We're only going to write this code one time, and then we're going to be able to basically loop it and like run these over and over and over again until one of the characters dies, and that will end it. So we need a function for the player's action and a function for the enemy's action. We're going to need like one or two more things. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in our skeleton. We're going to need a battle status screen that's going to let us know what our health status is and anything else that we want to put in there. And that's what we're going to fill in for right now. We are going to add a little bit more though. All right, so we're going to define a new function called player turn. And the first thing that's going to happen is the player is going to attack the enemy. So we're going to say damage is player.deal damage. So we're just using that deal damage function that, or method that we created on that character class earlier. And then we're going to pass in the enemy as an argument. All right, and then after that, we're going to create a Ren'Py notify. So here we're still in vanilla Python, so we have to use Ren'Py.notify because we're using the Ren'Py class. We can't just say notify. So we're going to say Ren'Py.notify, and we're going to create an f string. So remember to brush up on your string interpolation if you need to. But it should be pretty simple to follow along with. So, you attack enemy.name for damage. So this is going to say something like, I'll go ahead and tell you our player is going to be Luna and our enemy is going to be Steven. So this is going to say you attack Steven for 13 points or for 13 damage, you know, however much damage we're doing, which is going to be determined by our random number up there at the top. All right, and that's it. That's it for the player turn. Let's go ahead and do the enemy turn. So we're going to define an enemy turn function. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust damage if player is defending. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to read that defending flag, that Boolean that we created up here. Where is it? Yeah, self.defending equals false. So we're going to read that. We're going to say if player defending, then we're going to set our damage equal to random.randInt. We're going to use that function again. And in this one, we're going to create two values in parentheses. We're going to say enemy.attack. So using that attack method. And we're going to multiply that times 0.3. That's our lowest possible value. And then our highest possible value is going to be enemy.attack times 0.7. So we still have some randomness in there. Now it's going to take our enemy attack value. It's going to select a random number between a low value and a high value, just like we did before. But it's going to do anywhere from 30% damage to 70% damage. So it's impossible for it to do 0 damage, impossible for it to do 100% full damage. And we're going to do one more thing. So we're going to get into some weird decimal numbers when we start doing this. So we're going to cast these both to integers by putting int in front of them. So that's going to force it to be an integer. It's going to round it to a whole number instead of leaving it as a floating point value, which is going to make things nicer, a little bit cleaner. Then after that, we're going to set that player.defending flag back to false. So if it was true before, and we're going to show you how to set that to true in just a minute. So that's if the player is defending. Oops. If the player is not defending, we're going to create an else block, and we're just going to say damage equals enemy.deal damage to player. And that is pretty much it. And then we're going to actually have the player take the damage. Player.take damage. We're going to pass in our damage amount as an argument. And then create our Ren'Py.notify statement. We're going to say enemy.name attacks you for damage. Oops. There we go. Damage. There we go. That is our notify statement. That is about all of the core logic. So the next thing we're going to do is create our battle status screen. So here I'm going back to the left. So we're out of our init Python block. I'm actually going to collapse that down just so you can see where we are now. So we're going to go back into Ren'Py to use Ren'Py's built-in screen language. And we're going to create a screen. And again, I'm going to do another deep dive on screen language pretty soon, but just try to follow along the best you can. This is pretty simple. So we're going to create a screen as a function. It's going to be called battle status. It's going to take no parameters right now. And we're going to create a VBox, which is a vertical box on the screen. And we're going to put some text in there that says player health. And then in brackets, we're going to put player.health. So it will interpolate that and put the correct variable value in. And then we're going to say text enemy health. And that is going to be, as one might guess, enemy health. All right, and then we're going to have it give a notification if somebody is no longer alive. So we're going to say if not player.isAlive. So that's basically like saying if player is alive is equal to false. So if our player is dead, then we're going to update the text to say you have been defeated. Hopefully spelled correctly. And then our elif is going to be if not enemy dot is alive. Then we're going to change that text to the enemy has been defeated. And that's all we have to do for our battle status screen. And that's just going to put that up in the top left of the screen. And you'll see how that works in just a minute. All right, the next thing we have to do is to initialize our player and enemy objects. And as I stated before, we already defined our character objects up here. Those are just for the purposes of dialogue. For the purposes of the battle, we're going to create new character objects that inherit from this, actually from the player and enemy class, that are subclassed from the character class. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to say. And we're going to use this with the default keyword instead of the define keyword. This is actually a mistake that I made in one of my previous videos that somebody pointed out to me, is that it doesn't keep track of the variables very well when you use define. So you should use define statements whenever you're defining a variable that is not going to change. Like this L equals character. That character is always going to be Luna. The S character is always going to be Steven. Nothing's going to change about that. However, now we're instituting like health variables and things. And these are things that are going to change. So instead of using define, we're going to use the default keyword, which is just going to keep track of changing variables a little bit better. All right, so we're going to say default player equals, we're going to use that player object, And we're going to pass in our name, and it's going to expect a health value. So we're going to say health equals 100. Attack equals, we'll say 20. That'll work. And then our default enemy equals, we're going to use that enemy class. Also, be sure that you use capitals whenever you're defining these, or it won't find the right thing. These are case sensitive, and by convention in Python, you're expected to use capital letters for classes. Again, it won't throw a syntax error if you don't. That's just one thing that's kind of expected stylistically in Python. All right, name is Steven. Health equals, so we're going to make our enemy a little bit weaker than the player. So we're going to say health equals 80 and attack equals, we'll do 15. There we go. That's all we have to do to define our player and enemy objects, again, for the purposes of the battle system specifically. All right, so now we're into our actual game. That's all of the background coding that we need to do. That's basically the framework for our battle system. So we're going to just create a really quick scene. So we're going to set our BG bar. Again, you can use whatever graphics you have. I've just already got these dropped in. Show Luna neutral at left. And she's going to say, hi, I'm Luna. And then we're going to say, show Steven neutral at right. And then Luna's going to say, let's fight. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create a label for the battle. This would be a good practice. Again, this would be something that you could jump back and forth to in your game whenever you need to do a battle. So we're just going to put some narration text on the screen. We're going to say the battle begins. All right, then we're going to have a couple of things that we need to do. First thing we're going to need to do is to start the battle loop. And we're going to do that by creating an infinite loop on purpose. So we're going to say while true. So that means that this loop is going to run infinitely. I'm not giving it an ending condition. So if you create a loop with while true, it'll just run forever until you manually break out of the loop. And that's what we want to do. So we want to have this loop go on and on and on until we reach an end condition, and then we're going to manually break out of the loop. And we'll show you how to do that in a moment. So we're going to say while true. We're going to show our screen that we created. Show screen battle status. We're going to do our player's turn. And for this, we're going to create a menu that's going to allow us to select what we want to do. And right now, we only have two options, which are attack and defend. Let's go ahead and fill those in now. So for our attack, we're going to use just one Python line, and we're going to denote that Python line by putting the $sign. So remember, if you put in a $sign, that just means that one line is going to be vanilla Python code. And we have to do that in order to call any functions that we've created in vanilla Python, like we did earlier with our player turn. So when we run that player turn function, then it's going to run our player turn code that we created up here. So whenever we call that function, we're going to deal our damage, and then we're going to get a Ren'Py notify that lets us know who we attacked and how much damage we did. And after that, we're going to put in a pause statement, because otherwise it's going to just flash really quickly, like for a single frame, and you're not going to be able to see it. So I'm just going to put a pause for 3 seconds, and if the player is impatient, they can click through that. It's actually pretty intuitive, so it should work well. Then we're going to check to see if the enemy is alive. So if not, enemy.isAlive. Actually, we're checking to see if the enemy is dead, if they are not alive. Then we're going to put some narration text. We're going to say you defeated, and then enemy.name. And then we're going to jump to a victory statement, or a victory label, which we haven't created yet. We're going to do that in just a moment. But that's all we have to do for the attack. For defend, we're going to say player.defending equals true. So this is where we're going to set our defending flag. And our enemy object is going to read that flag on its turn to see if we're defending or not. So player.defending equals true, and then we're going to say narration text, you brace yourself for the next attack. And that's all we have to do for that. So next we are going to code the enemy's turn. Just notice I didn't put a space after that. That's going to bug me if I don't do it. There we go. So for the enemy's turn, it's going to be slightly simpler. So first we're going to call the enemy turn function. We don't have to pass any arguments into that. We're going to do just like we did before. We're going to pause for 3 seconds and then check the player status to see if they are not alive. So if not, player dot is alive, then we're going to use the narration text enemy dot name defeated you. And then we're going to jump to a game over label, which we also have not created yet. And we're going to do that right now. We are actually almost finished. So we're going to jump out of this while loop now. So it's going to be right there. And we're going to go one step back. There we go. So that's our while loop. That's going to run infinitely, again, until we reach one of these conditions, where we're going to manually break out of the loop by either jumping to victory or jumping to game over. All right, so for our label victory, these are going to be really, really simple. We're just going to put some narration text on the screen. Congratulations, you won the battle. And then run a return, which at this point is going to effectively end our game. Then we're going to create our label for game over. And that one's going to say game over. Better luck next time. And same thing, return, which is going to effectively end our game. And we've got this catch-all return statement. Which is probably redundant at this point, but it's fine. All right, that should be everything. Hopefully this will work. I don't think I made any errors in there. So just to recap, we've got our main character class with the initialization method. Then we've got our isAlive, take damage, and deal damage methods. We've got our player that inherits from that. We're going to add defending to that. Our enemy, which does not add defending to that. We've got our player turn and our enemy turn functions. Our battle status screen, where we defined our player and our enemy for the purposes of the battle. And then our battle itself with that loop that's going to run infinitely until we manually break out of it by jumping to either victory or game over. All right, let's test this and see how it works. All right, no crashes so far. So let's go to start. So we got Luna introducing herself and Steven introducing himself, and then let's fight. So right now I'm just going to, oh, and we've got an issue. Player object has no attribute is alive. I usually make some kind of a stupid typo in there. I'm sure about 8,000 of you caught that while I was typing, and you're probably screaming at your screen. I generally like to do my debugging in person or live on the air, unless it's something really complex, like I'll stop my camera and kind of fix it, but I always explain to you what it is, because I want everybody to understand that coding, especially if you're, I mean, if you're an advanced coder, which I am definitely not. I am like firmly in like the advanced beginner to intermediate stages. But coding is kind of messy. You're going to make typos, and you're gonna have to mess around and figure things out. And debugging is a huge part of the process, and I want you to know how to debug. I'm a pretty good debugger because I make a lot of mistakes, so I can generally figure things out. All right, let's try that again. All right, Steven's there. Let's fight. The battle begins. And here we go. So right now I'm just going to attack all the way through just so I can test our win condition. You can see our vertical box up there at the top right with our status in it. And then if I attack, you attack Steven for 16 damage. Pauses for 3 seconds. He attacks me for 17 damage. Pauses for 3 seconds. And, oh, let me see. Name error. Play is not defined. Oh, I accidentally put play instead of player. So that was in 111. There we go. Again, it's usually some stupid typo that I make. I'm just going to reload that. There we go. I was going to click through it kind of quickly. And I beat him. You defeated Steven, and then congratulations, you won the battle, and we return back to the beginning. All right, let's do that again. I'm just going to defend the whole time, so I'm not going to deal any damage, just to check our defending and to check our lose condition. Now you can see that our damage that we're taking on average is going to be significantly less than it was before. There we go, 5, 9. Let's just click through that really fast. And again, you can see that I can click through the pause statements when I just click it really fast. Take a little bit longer to die. Game over, better luck next time. Yeah, so everything works as expected. So again, that is a very, very simple version of a turn-based battle system, but it kind of gets you the mechanics of it and shows you how to put everything together. So from here, how can you take this and extend it? The most obvious thing that you can do, I think, is to add additional methods to the player class or to the enemy class to give them different abilities. Maybe give yourself a healing ability or ability to use items, or if you're doing, like fantasy RPG style, maybe give yourself spells that you can use, or your enemies spells that you can cast, or different weapons that you can use. Even if you're doing a modern one, maybe you can use different guns or bladed weapons or anything like that. So that is the obvious thing. But you could also expand your screen, the battle status screen, to actually give yourself different status. Like you can make it where one of the characters could be stunned, and that will prevent them from making any actions on the next turn or a certain number of turns, or have them poisoned where they take damage every round. Just think about usual typical RPG kind of tropes that you usually find. You could also add animations in, like have it where when one character takes damage, maybe do like a V punch where the character like moves back and forth a little bit, so you can actually see them being attacked. You can add sound effects in. Again, nearly limitless ways that you can expand upon this, make it your own, and do some really cool things with it. If there are any ideas that you have for this, I would love to hear about some of the things that you're doing with this battle system, some ways that you're extending it, or if there's anything else that you want to see from this battle system that you want to see me cover later on. Be sure to leave me a comment below, and I'll see about doing that in a future video, or if there's anything else in particular that you want to see. But that will do it for now. I hope this was clear enough. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.